Enrique Acevedo is an anchor for Univision. He joins us now. And Enrique, you seem like a reasonable person. How did you wind up with the group and the media defending MS-13? Did you ever think you'd be there?
I don't think any human being is an animal, Tucker, but I'm not here to defend criminals, nor should anyone else.
Yes,
if you're for law and order, I don't think degrading anyone to less than human serves that purpose. You would expect the President of the United States to speak to our highest ideals and not just our worst instincts.
So let's just to put this in some context. Here are a couple recent headlines about MS-13. MS-13 gang stabbed man 100 times, decapitated him, and ripped out his heart, police say. MS-13 beat sex trafficked girl with a bat 28 times. MS-13 members in satanic shrine kidnapped, drugged, and raped a 14-year-old Houston girl. I could go on. When you hear those people described as animals, you get offended. Why? Why would people who do that need to be defended by you? What about what Trump said sort of got you going?
I think we cannot pretend to look at this in a larger context. We cannot pretend that this is not part of a larger trend that started way before Donald Trump became president, a trend of criminalizing and dehumanizing all immigrants, not just the bad hombres. The question was about gang members who are operating inside the U.S. President Trump answered by calling those coming across the border animals.
No, I mean, look, I'm not here to defend all of Trump's views, but in this very specific case, he was asked about MS-13. He's been talking about this for more than a year, and he said they're animals. Now, you may not like the term. Maybe it's imprecise or whatever, but I find it so interesting that you rush to the defense of MS-13. Is there no one else you can defend? There are not other worthy people being attacked? You need to defend a street gang that worships Satan and beheads people? Like, do you wake up in the morning and ask yourself, like, how did I get here? I'm a decent person. Why am I defending MS-13?
I'm not sure what you mean when you say that I defended MS-13. I actually
defending them.
I started this interview by saying I'm not here to defend any criminals, especially
and then you went on to defend them to say that they were dehumanized.
No, I'm just saying that no human being is an animal. That's what I'm saying.
Okay,
so dehumanizing someone doesn't serve the purpose of law and order. It serves the purpose of chaos and lawlessness.
Okay. We're all animals, okay, just as a biological question. Maybe that the term is imprecise. Maybe you don't like it. But you're rushing to the defense, and it's not just you. It's John Harwood at the New York Times. It's the entire media establishment, and the Democratic Party is unable to admit that there are immigrants who shouldn't be here. They're horrible. They kill people, especially the poor and the vulnerable, and MS-13 is the embodiment of that.
And I think we agree on that point. There are a lot of bad apples inside the immigrant community. That's why President Trump and Jeff Sessions should work with the Hispanic community to try to root those bad apples out of their neighborhoods.
Wait,
and not just
what do you mean the Hispanic community?
Federal funding from sanctuary cities so they won't report crimes and they'll be afraid of going to the police.
The Hispanic community doesn't have a monopoly on the concerns of all Americans of all colors and backgrounds, ethnicities, about crime. It has nothing to do with Hispanic or black or white. It's Americans don't want animals like this in the country. And again, I just ask you, why did it bother you when he said that? I just think it's weird. It's kind of a weird response.
It bothered me because, I think you have to put things in context, and I'll do that for you.
Okay.
The context here has to do with a larger trend, with President Trump calling Mexican immigrants rapists and then calling some white nationalists very fine people. The context here has to do with President Trump pardoning Arpaio and canceling DACA. The context here has to do with a constant conflating of immigration and criminality. When have you heard someone in the Trump administration say something positive about immigrants?
Well, I don't know. I mean,
the fact that many of them are immigrants, first-generation immigrants, or they have benefited from.
Okay, first of all, they have whatever. They're not required by the Constitution to compliment immigrants. Sorry. Second, you may not agree with all of his policies, but in this, again, this specific case, he's criticizing people who are evil and are killing, once again, the poor and the defenseless, and you've been driven so crazy by Trump that you can't even accept that as true. If I attack Charles Manson as an animal, does that bother you?
Of course not. And you know what? I agree with President Trump.
Why? Because he's not an immigrant or Hispanic?
The criminals should be deported. But guess what? Last year, ICE arrests were up by 30%, and the larger percentage of that increase had to do with non-criminal immigrants. So if they want to get rid of the bad hombres instead of separating families, they should focus on that and not deport a larger number of people who have no criminal records.
Wait, why don't we look? People who are here legally should be deported. That's what the law says. If you don't like the law, change it in the Congress. If you're here
but you just
illegally,
said that they should focus
leave now.
on dangerous criminals.
I
agree
know.
with that.
I mean,
they should focus on dangerous criminals.
I think we
so
should
let's
deport
focus resources, time, and energy on those people, on the bad hombres.
I'm sick of being bullied by foreigners about who we can deport and who we can't. Our law says if you're here illegally, we get to deport you, period. I'm sure a lot of good people would be deported if we did that. I'd feel sad about it, but that's our law.
The law also says that you're entitled to request asylum, and we were also criticizing that last week when the caravan came to the border.
That's our law, and foreigners have no right to weigh in on our asylum laws because they're not voters or citizens. We get to decide. But final question. Why does it not bother you when I call Charles Manson an animal, but it does bother you when Trump calls MS-13 animals?
It bothers me when any criminal commits such horrific acts of criminality, and I see how people can be deeply affected by them. But I don't think that degrading someone to less than human serves the purpose of law and order. President Trump seems to understand very well what speaks to the Trump base. But he's not the president of the Fox News audience. He's also the president of the Univision audience. And he's not speaking to the anxieties and the concerns of Hispanics.
Really? So who do you you speak for all Hispanics?
No, of course not.
Are you the appointed leader of Hispanics now? How'd you get that job? Were you elected to it?
No, I'm not speaking for all Hispanics. I'm saying the president should speak to all Hispanics.
Very quick, let me ask you. Who do you think the victims of MS-13 violence are overwhelmingly? Are they Fox News?
Well, you know, the overwhelming majority are Central American refugees who are fleeing that violence and trying to come into this country, but you're calling them people who are trying to take advantage of our legal system. The vast majority of the MS-13 and Nara Salvatrucha victims are the people in Honduras and El Salvador
here.
Coming here.
By the way, let me just say, last thing, I got to go. Please convince the Democrats to run in defense of MS-13. I think it's a fantastic campaign plank.
I think it would be a major mistake to defend any criminal.
But you do anyway. Thank you. Great to see you tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Tucker.
Well, even when the media admitted that President Trump was, in fact, talking about MS-13, they couldn't stop themselves from defending MS-13. CNBC's John Harwood weighed in on Twitter, as he often does. Quote, however repugnant their actions, he said, speaking of the banalities for which he is famous, MS-13 gang members are human beings, in my humble opinion. CNN's Ana Navarro went farther, of course.
He does things like call immigrants animals.
The defense is that he was following up by a statement of a sheriff saying that this is MS-13. He was just talking about MS-13. Good enough?
No, not good enough. And it is a very slippery slope when you start dehumanizing people this way. It's what the Nazis did. It's what slave owners did. It's not what Americans do.
America's moral voice, Ana Navarro, speaking from CNN. Larry O'Connor is associate editor of the Washington Times, and he joins us tonight. That's not what Americans do.
Yeah, that's what I've
Larry
heard.
Says Ana Navarro at CNN.
You know,
that's what the Nazis did.
I don't expect much from Ana Navarro. You know what I found most telling about that clip? Chris Cuomo calling what Donald Trump said. You know, he says his defense is he was talking about MS-13. It's not his defense. It's the fact. It's the truth. He wasn't defending himself. That was actually the truth that the media didn't report. But for Chris Cuomo to act like, oh, gosh, how can this be? How can you talk about MS-13? You know, it's like saying that I can't discern from the Gambino crime family and Chris Cuomo or any other Italian American. Or
exactly right.
It's outrageous. And this is my biggest problem. As you said, you're seeing Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all these other people who are condemning the remarks based on a lie. And now, 24 hours later, you'd think you'd see some retractions. Think you'd see some corrections. And the best they've got is, well, even MS-13 deserves to not be dehumanized. You know, if you can't call MS-13 gang members animals, if you can't call them out on their repugnant, repulsive behavior, you've surrendered your ability to make any moral judgments in our society.
So the first draft, and I don't do too many media segments because obviously they're just dumb and they're an arm of the Democratic Party, but the first draft of their story said that Trump had attacked undocumented immigrants.
Yeah, migrants. They
said
migrants. Or many who cross the border.
So that was a Democratic Party talking point.
It was a
flat out.
Absolute total lie. And it was CNN, New York Times, Washington Post, ABC News, NBC News, C-SPAN. Even C-SPAN, who pretends to be completely down the middle, I think usually they are, they did the same thing.
So why shouldn't these be reporters' in-kind contributions to the Democratic National Committee?
That's a great question. Or maybe they should. So Associated Press, by the way, the only ones that I've seen who fully retracted it and deleted their tweets. But why aren't they called up on any kind of ethics questions?
But Jeff Bezos' paper didn't retract it?
No, I haven't seen any retraction from them. They've said further context, suggesting that it was out of context, but it wasn't out of context that they took the president. They lied about what the president said, a complete misrepresentation.
Larry O'Connor, always great to see you.
Great to see you, Tucker. Thank you.